If Jesus came and didn't have power, I believe Jesus would get killed all over again, practically in most regions. He'd start off trying to do some good, and while trying to do that good, he'd uncover layers of corruption, and they'd kill him for it. And many of these people who would help, maybe not physically help, but would support it in some way by supporting the corruption. They would claim to be followers, or they would believe themselves to be followers. Think about this. Think about what I'm saying. Whether it's valid or not. Imagine if Jesus came and didn't have power. Because most people would be trying to, or wanting Jesus to prove that he's Jesus by performing some type of miracle or something like that. And if Jesus couldn't or wouldn't, they probably wouldn't believe. So if Jesus just tried to influence people to have a cleaner heart and to do good things, he'd most likely start off like most people would, um, maybe through fundraising, combination of fundraising, organizations, uh, preaching certain beliefs, as well as, and maybe the main thing, getting certain laws changed and certain policies changed. But how are you going to fight homelessness, mental illness, drugs, or drug addiction when it fattens so many people's pockets? What will those people do to you if they believe their pockets aren't getting fatter? or if they believe their pockets might start coming up light, they might not just kill you immediately. They'll just put a wrench in what you're doing at first, create delays, excuses. Then, if none of that worked, they'll start making personal problems for you. Maybe telling lies or embellishments. Get others to tell lies or embellishments. So that you won't succeed. It seems like there are so many examples of people trying to do good, but they can't do that good because it's bad for somebody's business. It's easy to give people turkeys on Thanksgiving and give the homeless and the needy presents on Christmas. But if you start trying to eradicate homelessness, eradicate drug addiction, eradicate mental illness, for people who can't see the benefit of a world or a society where these things don't exist or are rare, they will look at this person as a troublemaker, as someone causing problems. So, I want most of you, or all of you listening to this, to question whether or not you're on the side, or I'll phrase it this way, whether or not you're overall on the side of good or on the side of evil or darkness. I understand doing things when you're desperate. I understand we make mistakes. I understand we're not perfect. I understand we make decisions we're not proud of. But there's a very, very big difference in doing these things a couple of times and regretting it and changing your life and making these things into a career. That, I believe, has major consequences. That is a major commitment. And many people out here, you, you don't just have businesses and organizations based on most of the things that every major religion considers sinful or wrong. You're grooming new generations to take over these businesses, these organizations. And I want all of you to consider that every major religion believes in some form of afterlife. Well, you know what? Before that, every major religion believes that they agree that certain behaviors are wrong or sinful or should be avoided, should be restricted. And many of these things lead to crime. Many of these things can be considered crimes in practically every region. So that means that intuitively, across racial lines, across political lines, across regional lines, people overall believe that these behaviors are not good. So they create laws and policies to prevent you from doing these things and to punish you or rehabilitate you for maybe doing these things. So if you're making a career and a livelihood of these behaviors that every major religion considers sinful or wrong, and most regions consider criminal or bad for the culture, where do you think you're going to go, or what do you think you produce not only in this life, but what might you produce in the next? Or I'll phrase it this way: if we criminalize these behaviors in this life and say that these things are immoral in this life and create jails and prisons for people who engage in these things in this life, where might you think you're deserving of going in the next life? If you're still the same individual or a similar individual as you were in this life. If your heart is the same way. Now, I know many people don't believe in an afterlife, or you're an atheist or something of that nature. So I advise you to watch somewhere like around, I don't know, 10 to 15, maybe even 20 videos of different individuals talking about how they died. You know what? I would start off talking about, or looking into people who were verified to be dead, clinically dead, and what they said they saw and what they experienced. I would look into that. That'll take you, I mean, give it 30 minutes. Give it 30 minutes of your time. 30 minutes of your time is not a long time to to potentially maybe figure out whether or not there might be an eternity as opposed to a brief livelihood, and then you die. And I say that to say there are there's so much evidence of something else afterwards. I mean, even I mean, I could talk. I could talk for a very, very long time about that, but it's not necessary because so many people have already done that. So I believe I've said enough. Think about the quality of your mind and your heart and your decisions. Engage whether or not you are overall good or bad. Try to gauge whether or not your behavior is overall positive for humanity or destructive for humanity, and what that says about you.